Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Actuary Voices, the podcast series from the American Academy of Actuaries. In this series, we feature interviews and conversations around a number of today's top professionalism and public policy topics. Some of the voices you'll hear may be familiar to you, others may be new to you. Today, we will hear the first of two conversations between Tom Wildsmith, who was president of the Academy in 2016, and our executive director, Mary Downs. Please enjoy this illuminating conversation. Email us at podcast@actuary.org to share your thoughts.
So we're here today with Tom Wildsmith, who is a former president of the American Academy of Actuaries from 2015 to 2016, right, Tom?
That's right. It's a pleasure to be with you, Mary.
Good. And before that, you had been on the Academy board as VP Health in, I think, 2010 to 2012.
I believe that's right.
And you are currently on the board. So maybe you would tell the audience a little bit about your current position with the Academy and maybe how you've seen differences in the three different roles you've had so far.
Oh, that's a great question. I am currently on the board of directors. I'm also currently serving as the Academy's international secretary. As vice president, all of my focus was on the Health Practice Council, as well it should be. That was a very executive role in the sense that most of my focus was on what we were doing in the health area, making sure the committee structure was working appropriately, making sure we were working on the correct issues. This was in the middle of the healthcare debate and the beginning of the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, so there was a great deal of work there. On the board, that's a role that's totally not executive. One of the most difficult things is keeping yourself out of micromanagement and trying to provide the strategic decision-making and guidance that the Academy needs. Honestly, with my first stint on the board, I thought I was thinking strategically. But there were decisions we made at the time that were mistakes, looking back. And I was part of those decisions, and I regret those mistakes. But I think as actuaries, most of us in our day jobs are not truly strategic thinkers. We think we are. We try to be. But we tend to be in more operational roles. And that's a handicap when we become board members. With the presidency, you might think that that's an executive role. In a very real sense, I found myself, though, acting more as frontman for the Academy, as the most visible public spokesperson for the Academy. And my job encompassed the Academy as a whole, all of the practice areas, and the role of the actuary more generally. Two of the biggest surprises were I had almost no time to spend on healthcare issues, although I'd been a healthcare actuary all of my career. I was sucked into pension issues and international issues, which was a bit of a nasty surprise for me. But again, fulfilling that role as frontman for the Academy, it was important for me to take on that role. The second most surprising thing to me was the extent to which I became a ceremonial object. There were events where it was important for me to be in the room as a token of the seriousness that the Academy placed on whatever was going on. That being said, no one had any interest in anything I might say or do at that event, because it was a pension event or a casualty event. And I was truly there, much like the American flag on the podium in the Senate, to represent something, which is a very strange experience. Again, it was something I was very happy to do, but it was a interesting experience. One of the things that it did underline for me is the importance that the Academy has, and the importance of the Academy being represented in different forums, and the importance of our representing the Academy well. It's not enough that we do our individual piece of volunteering well, although that is very important. But we are individually and collectively, in a very real sense, representing the profession as a whole. And that's something that's important. And it's something that certainly the Academy president needs to do well, and we've been blessed with some presidents who've done it quite well. But we all do it in a variety of settings every day. And the profession's reputation depends on us all doing it well.
You know, it might be interesting to the audience to hear some of your personal background, where you're from, how you got on the road that led to becoming an actuary, and maybe the jobs even that brought you to your current position. And can you share some of that history with us?
Well, I'm a Southerner. I'm from Tennessee. People tell me that I still retain my accent, although my family thinks I've lost it. From that, I conclude that I must have sounded like Jethro Clampett. I have been in D.C. since 95. I became an actuary by accident. I really didn't intend to be one. My dad was a property and casualty underwriter for years, and then he was an insurance agent with an independent insurance agency, and then later on his own. He would talk about his job at the dinner table. And all I can say is, if you are an 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old young man, being a property casualty underwriter has got to be one of the most boring topics in the universe. So I was pretty sure I had wanted to do nothing with insurance. I majored in math in college. I minored in speech. I tended to gravitate towards the classes that, for one reason or another, seemed easy for me, and where you didn't have to write papers. And that's the beautiful thing about math. Once you figure out how to do the problems, you can stop. At least when I was taking the classes, you didn't typically have to write papers. And the same was true about speech. I was planning on going to graduate school in math. My senior year, the last semester, I had a homework assignment for spring break. And there was a seminar class that they called something clever, but it was really how to get a job. And the homework assignment was to take a practice interview. I was not terribly focused on it, but my dad had some connections in the local insurance community. So he got me an interview with the chief actuary for the local health insurance company. It was a terrible interview. I did a terrible job. It was obvious. With the polite handshake at the end, it was clear the man had done his social duty and had no interest in me whatsoever. But at the time, there was an actuarial aptitude test. And before they took me up to the interview, the HR department had asked me to take the test. I must have done quite well on the test because it was not the interview. But by the time I got home, my dad met me in the driveway, and they had called and they wanted me to call them back. That interview led to a job offer. I literally got the job offer letter the same day I got an acceptance letter from Vanderbilt's graduate school in math. So I had a decision to make. I decided to take the job with the insurance company because my wife and I, Sally and I, were engaged at the time. And on balance, I thought that I might enjoy the work environment of academia more, but starving in student housing had very little appeal to me. And the way I rationalized it to myself was I could go to Vanderbilt and pay them to allow me to study and take tests, or I could go to the insurance company and allow them to pay me to study and take tests. So that's what I did. What's really interesting is my baby sister is 5 years younger than me. She ended up majoring in math at the same college I went to. She was not engaged to anyone, and she ended up graduating with a PhD from Vanderbilt. So she took exactly the other path, and she's had a good life. But the actuarial profession's been very good to me too. So I don't regret it. I think one reason I don't regret it is because that choice was so stark that I remember the decision and I remember exactly why I made it. And I had, frankly, really not much understanding about what the career would entail. So it's probably been much better to me than I deserve, particularly because I truly fell into it by accident through that practice interview.
I'd like to go back for a minute to something you mentioned about your work in college, that you majored in math, minored in speech, and that you took every class you could that would avoid requiring you to write a paper. And yet we have found that you write beautifully and well and quickly, and have been a wonderful developer of all kinds of papers and documents that I think will probably stand the test of time for quite a long while to come, particularly in the professionalism area. So have you changed your mind about liking to write?
Yes, I like to write. I didn't learn how to write in college. I took all of the required courses, of course. I had the opportunity when I was working for the trade association to work with some professional editors. Like most trade associations, we had some very slick publications. We had white papers we would do. We had research studies we would do. We had advocacy materials we would do. It is a nasty shock the first time you work with a professional editor. I was college educated. I was an experienced actuary. I thought I was intelligent. I thought I was articulate. I thought I knew what I was saying. But the first few times I wrote anything for formal publication through the trade association, what I wrote would come back with roughly 40% of the words crossed out with a red pen, which is a bit of a nasty shock. So you immediately become outraged, and then you take out the stuff that's been crossed out in red, and you read it, and there may be a few things that got a little garbled in the editing process, but it's actually better. It flows better. It's more, there's less jargon. It's more easily understood. The sentences are shorter. So I finally had to admit that the editors were better writers than I was. And I worked there for 9 years. So over time, I was a slow learner, but they trained me. Over time, it went from 40% of the words were crossed out to 35 to 30%. I gradually got better. The biggest thing I learned from them was there were several important lessons. One was to avoid jargon if at all possible. Shorter sentences are better than longer sentences. And what I finally translated it into is I now make a very conscious effort to write the way that I speak. Most of us, when we write, tend to use what's the linguistic term? A different register. We write in a more formal register. The sentences get longer. We stack the clauses up. We use stuffier words. And what that does is when you go to read it, it doesn't seem natural to the reader. You start sounding like a textbook. So when I write, what I'm really trying to do is talk and then translate that to paper. I'm not great at it yet. When I read what I've written, it usually sounds a little more formal, a little stuffier. The sentences still are a little longer, but I am way, way better than I was when I started. And that's no credit to me. That's really a testament to the patience of some professional editors who worked me over hard.
I think it would be interesting for the listeners to know what you do in your spare time.
I am a pretty boring person.
Oh, no, that's not true.
No, I appreciate that. I am addicted to books. I always have been. I am trying to retrain myself to buy them electronically rather than in dead tree version. Because our house is entirely too full of books. More recently, I have discovered barbecue making, which is quite a lot of fun. I work very hard at playing the piano badly. Sally and I take piano lessons together. When our youngest daughter went to college, Sally was a bit heartbroken, and the house was pretty empty. So we looked for something to do. The local music store offered music lessons. They do half-hour lessons. We found a very good piano instructor there who was willing to let us book 2 back-to-back half-hour lessons, so we have a 1-hour couples piano class each week. Again, neither one of us are going to be great performers, but we have a great deal of fun playing piano badly. I'm not particularly good at it, but I've done a martial arts class for years. So I'm a pretty typical middle-aged suburban American in my hobbies and avocations.
And looking forward, what about the challenges you see facing the profession?
On the on the professional side, I'm really not too concerned about the long-term future for the profession. There was a time much earlier in my career when we thought MBAs were going to eat our lunch. And, it's great to have an MBA, but actuaries are still doing fine. We are concerned now that there was a time in the area where I work where we thought health economists were going to eat our lunch. And I know some very, very good health economists, but I'm still doing fine. Right now, we're concerned that data scientists are going to eat our lunch. Data science is a technical specialty that is incredibly powerful, and we're going to have to get smart about it. But it's not a profession. And what that means is it doesn't have the organized commitment to the public that we do. And there's a reason that I can sign certain statements that are filed with the state insurance department that a health economist can't. And it has nothing to do with technical skill. The health economist may be smarter, may have better models, but the health economist doesn't have the same professional commitments, but not just commitments, the code of conduct, the standards of practice, the disciplinary process to protect the public. So what I think our biggest challenge is going to be is figuring out how we continue to professionalize ourselves as we move into big data, data science, more complicated models. We certainly need to learn those technical specialties and those tools and techniques, but we need to make sure that our professional standards and professional mechanisms keep up so that we can provide the public with a profession they can rely on as these tools move into the systems that we work with.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And I hope that everyone else that listens to this experiences the same pleasure that I always do when we have that kind of interchange.
Oh, thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you for listening to Actuary Voices. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast hosting service and email us at podcast@actuary.org to share your thoughts on this series and topics that you'd like to have explored in the future.